Robert Scott Bell.
All right, this hour on the Robert Scott Bell Show, we are going to dive deep into, I don't know if it's a mystery, but certainly there's a lot unknown about a big story. The big story of the week, a teenager, 18 now. Again, I look at this as a dad because my son is now 19. And Super Don has kids and grandkids. So we've been through this or are going through this. Teenage rebellion. And this story is about the vaccine issue. Because if you're a family, and like mine, and like many that listen to the Robert Scott Bell Show,
already got
you've woken up to the danger of vaccination. You may have woken up to the fact that they don't do what they say they do. That is, protect you from disease. In fact, they create disease. Granted, there are a lot of people that aren't on board with our perspective or my perspective here, and I recognize that. I'm very vocal and direct about it. Yet I've tried to raise my children with the concept of individual liberty. We talk about it every day, but certainly with Jonathan Emord, that, I'm raising my children to hopefully one day they'll be able to, go out on their own and make decisions for themselves, and we equip them with the best tools to make good decisions. But granted, there's going to be some things your kids do you're not going to like. Now, if they're still under your roof and they're still minors, they pretty much got to do what you tell them, within reason, of course. You know what I'm saying? And Super Don, you're laughing. You hope that they do. You never rebelled against your mom and dad, did you?
Never.
Of course not.
Ever, no.
Model teenager there. Yes. So what's quadruply intriguing about this story, when it came out, we're like, what is going on here? Apparently, a teenager in Ohio by the name of Ethan Lindenberger went on to Reddit and started asking questions based on, hey, my mom was not for vaccines. I was never vaccinated, and now I want to find out how to get vaccinated. And there were a number of things that Super Don and I were wondering about this. And there was even a local Ohio news, TV news that covered it. We played some audio clips and reacted to some of the audio clips. And I was like, I'm a little suspicious of the story. I'm not sure what part of it, but there's something that doesn't add up. Now, for one, I don't go to Reddit for anything, although I've been mentioned on Reddit before, not kindly, but
yes,
it's, I don't. So I'm like, I got to think, well, would a teenager do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe. Because as we talked about, if you're 18, you want to go get a vaccine, there are a number of places you can go get it. Why do you need to ask Reddit? But okay, that's what kids do. They go online. And then in this news report, the mom, her name, Jill Wheeler, talked about, not being for vaccination. But in the short clip that they played of her, said something about, I support my son, researching it. I'm like, well, that's a respectful place to be as a parent. At 18, you may disagree with your now young adult, but you acknowledge, that they're able and capable of now making their own decision. But that it blew up. And it became a global phenomenon this week in terms of mainstream media coverage all over the place. And Super Don, you grabbed headline after headline, all different variations of this, anti-vaxxer mother is now, being, I don't know, how were some of these things, thrown out there? It was like the kid at one point was quoted, and I don't know, maybe we'll find out if he really said this, is I don't know how I'm alive. I didn't get any vaccines.
Yes. No, the headlines were crazy. And every news outlet picked this up.
Mm-hmm.
And the headlines are obviously very biased because the media is very biased on this particular issue. But, son defies mom and gets vaccinated and doesn't know how he's alive. Teen who defied anti-vax mom speaks out. Vaccinations are good and beneficial. U.S. teenager secretly gets vaccinated and attacks conspiracy theory believing anti-vax parents. I mean, these headlines are just like, holy cow, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But it was obvious to me.
Yeah.
And I think after you look at all of these headlines,
mm-hmm.
No. This is just too perfect of a situation here for everybody to pick this up and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
It really looked like there was some kind of agenda going on here.
Well, and we've had Officer Hayes in our chat room now is saying these are crisis actors, right? We've seen that, people going, this is all a conspiracy. This is not real. And I had my suspicions about it because it was too weird. It's like, what do you want to do? The mainstream media is setting this up to make vaccinating cool and to disobey your parents if they're not into vaccinations, if they're so-called anti-vaxxers. And I was very upset by this. Because it's bad enough, though, the attacks on the integrity, the sanctity, the sovereignty of the family in our culture today. I'm thinking you need to add to the mix and say, wow, children should now disobey their parents and run out to a health department and get vaccinated against their parents' will before they're 18, before they're at the age of majority. So again, the agenda was clear. The question is, are the people behind this real? Or the people, so-called players that you've seen interviewed on TV, real? Now, I got contacted this morning by a friend in Texas. Antoinette, thank you so much. Says, please contact my friend Jill Wheeler about this. She's, beside herself because of the way they're treating not only her, but her son as well in the broadcast media. So right then and there, I said, okay, I've got a clue now. These are real people. There's something else going on. And there are other people that have proposed, hey, some people have taken advantage of this unusual story that happened. So, kind of monitors Reddit, monitors feeds, and says, you know what, we can do something this. We can blow this up. And there are people that have legitimate links to PR agencies, pro-pharma trolls that blew this thing up. But the people I'm going to tell you right now are real behind it. And we're going to get to one of them right now. The mom in this circumstance in Ohio, Jill Wheeler, joins us for the first time on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Jill, thank you so much for being here. And, welcome. And we want to tell your story here on the air today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Jill, my concern as I kind of shared before bringing you in is that, as we were looking at this, is like, this is just a strange story that would suddenly appear everywhere in the mainstream media. Now, you're a family, you've got a number of kids. You told me earlier today that, you had vaccinated at least one or two of your kids to start and were alarmed because some things were happening to your child.
I did. I was young when I had my first. I was 20, and I just thought vaccinations was just something you did. It was like feeding your child. It wasn't an option. It was just something you did. So I did. I started vaccinations for my oldest, and I had my second, and I started vaccinations for him as well. And I remember getting his chickenpox vaccine, and the doctor looking at me and saying, "You've come back in 10 years. And I was like, what do you mean? I thought these were lifelong immunities. And they're like, no, you're going to have to get this one every 10 years. And I said, well, wait a minute. I thought that if he got the chicken pox as a child, that would be much better than getting it as an adult. But yeah, but as long as you come every 10 years, it'll prevent him from ever getting chicken pox. And I remember going home that day thinking something's not right. Something's not adding up, because that's not what I was told with my daughter. And that's not what I was told when I first started immunizing my son. So I started researching, I started reading, and it was so funny because some people, ask me, are you anti-vax? What are you? I'm like, I was a mom that was 23 years old that wanted to figure out what was going on with my kids. That's what I was. I wasn't for vaccinations. I wasn't against vaccinations. I wanted to know what was going on with my kids and what I was allowing these doctors to put into my children. And I wanted to be able to make a decision for my kids based on what I found, what the information that I, researched. I wanted to educate myself. And I didn't want to be ignorant to either side. So, I got books that was completely for immunizations. I bought books that were completely against. I tried finding books that were neutral. I researched as much as I could. And the stuff I found was shocking. And when it was all said and done, I said, absolutely, absolutely not. We are done. We are absolutely done immunizing. And I got some pretty hard backlash on that one. Like I said, I was young. I wasn't a doctor.
Jill, you mentioned to me, and I was concerned because, of course, the other thing, your son's name is Lindenberger, but and your last name Wheeler, but you're divorced from his father. But from what I understand, the father and you were on the same page and still are in regards to the vaccination of kids. Okay, we
absolutely are. Yes, yes.
So here. It became clearer as I learned this today, again, because I didn't know you prior to meeting you through our mutual friend, Antoinette, who you've known since childhood, apparently in Texas. And it's a small world, though. It's amazing that this happened today. And you're dealing with what as a parent, it's kind of I would say a worst nightmare, but it's sort of like, you raise your kids to believe certain things that you believe, and you try to be good examples, and then they become adults and they do something different. That's not new. Right. That's been happening since parents have had kids. So in this case, though, it blew up in the mainstream media because there's an agenda. promote, my gosh, how horrible this mother is. And they played on some things that your son apparently wrote or said on Reddit or otherwise. And I want to get to the bottom of this, because I'm sure your son is a nice young man. And you know, I've heard that, you know, he hasn't been treated all that well, even by some who might believe, as I do, that vaccines are not the best thing to do. So I want to be respectful in this for your family's sake and your son. My son is 19. I would disagree strongly with if he decided now, Dad, you never wanted me to get vaccinated, Mom, but I'm going to go get him now. Now, you're living in my home. I might have something to say about it until you move out. But again, you're an adult. So I recognize that these things can happen. But you know, we need to clear up some things. What is real? What is not real about what has occurred? We've got about a little less than a minute before we got to go to break here. And I know your son is at work tonight, or else I would have loved to talk to him as well and find out a little bit more. So clarity is something we want to achieve here.
Absolutely.
And for your story to be told outside of what we're doing here on radio, think about if you have like a Facebook page or a website, if you want people to read, you know, from your heart what you're communicating. We're going to communicate it verbally while we have time on the air tonight. And we'll be talking, obviously, this hour, the bulk of this hour, with Jill Wheeler, the mother of Ethan Lindenberger, about the case that went viral of a child now becoming an adult who wants to get vaccinated, and are using this to divide and conquer families that may have similar circumstances.
Live around the world.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
Robert Scott Bell.
Okay, Jill, doing a great job communicating. You did it wonderfully well. So thank you for that.
Super nervous.
Yeah, well, I couldn't tell. You did great.
Oh my gosh, I've been pacing all day. I'm so nervous.
I'm sorry about that. That's we are not intimidating here. Maybe Super Don, my producer, because his deep voice.
No, you guys are wonderful. I know I have a ton of stuff that I definitely want to say, because I have not been able to say it on these little 30-second clips. They make me sound so stupid. Like, oh, my son is a good boy. It's like, where's the whole 5 minutes where I was like, he's wrong.
Right.
I love him, but he's wrong, and I hope he doesn't end up paying for it.
Right. By the way, folks, we are, and Jill, just to remind you, we are on YouTube. So on the commercial breaks, even though the radio audience is not hearing our discussion, those of you watching on YouTube, and maybe friends of yours and Antoinette's, because I know a lot of people put this out there because it is of great concern to our community. What is real, what is not real about this? And Super Don, if you can parse some of the information about the groups or people involved in getting this to become this blown up media story, because you know there were some Facebook posts about that were not surprising to me. Once I realized that Jill is a real mom, and you know, and her son is a real son, that these aren't crisis actors making this stuff up, but they are being their message is being altered by the media. And I want to find out where they got it wrong. And as you said, Jill, in your interview on TV, they gave you like a 30-second amount of probably 20 minutes of interview. That's so typical.
Right. And that was really frustrating, because it made it seem like I was just so nonchalant about what he was doing, when in reality, this is totally, in the last, month that he told me this, it has totally rocked my whole world, including my kids, all my kids. It has changed everything around this house.
Yeah.
It's been rough. It's been hard.
I've said it's easier to deal with a family that has different religious views than it is to deal with a family that has part of the family believes in vaccinations and the other part has said, no more. That is more emotionally fraught and vicious with anger and all, because as I've said, the religion of vaccinology is more powerful than the religion of most people's youth if they adopt it. Because you can speak about religious issues and have disagreements, but it never gets more violently angry than when you say, you know what, I don't vaccinate. And then they suddenly become just frightened of you because they bought the lies. And again, here we're talking about, and we will on the air in a moment when we come back, your son's research. Again, I don't have him to talk to, so I'm going to rely on your perspective on that. And Super Don watched some of the video interviews. On appearance, it does seem that he's enjoying the spotlight, of being. He's
18. I'm sure he probably
is.
And
that's what I thought too.
He's right, and everyone's listening to him.
Yeah. Now suddenly you got a position where you're like, whoa, let's hear what he says. So.
Right.
Yeah. Super Don.
Yeah, he's done a ton of interviews because as I was doing some research for this, I mean, he's been on every outlet has taken advantage of this story, and they're loving it. And listen, there are a lot of people that are pointing out what I think is the obvious here, which is that when they found his information, what he was doing on Reddit, they saw an opportunity to use him as kind of like a poster child, right? Yeah. You know, of let's, you know,
kids who want to be vaccinated despite their parents' wishes.
Let's make this something that's a rebellious thing for teenagers, to maybe to influence teenagers out there and get in there and use a different tactic here. And I think that's what they're hoping for.
Yeah. All right. We're coming back live in 5 seconds and carry on. We're doing great. Conversational. We got a break at the bottom of the hour. We'll chat some more. Here we go.
The information is so good, it requires no expiration date. The Robert Scott Bell Show.
Has teenage anti-vax rebellion gone global? That's the question, as we're talking with Jill Wheeler, the mom of Ethan Lindenberger, who is now a media star, a rising media star at 18, because he went onto the internet, read it, and somebody read it and said, "Oh my gosh, we got a teenager that doesn't want that whose mom and dad don't want to vaccinate, and he wants to get vaccinated. Oh man, can we do something with this story?" Now, some of my audience have speculated that the mom and the kid were not real; these were made up crisis actor people. I know for a fact that, well, I know you now, Jill, through my friend Antoinette, that you've been friends for years. So this is not. And some people say, "Well, she's involved in theater, apparently something to do with children's theater," and you know, listen, we are conspiracy realists here. We will look and find out where the facts lead us. And the conspiracy here is those who have taken advantage of your son to put him up on a pedestal, to spotlight him as, wow, now we can send a message to all teenagers that vaccinating is cool and that anti-vaccine parents are not cool and you should rebel against your parents. And I think this is a very dangerous precedent.
Which is funny because they make it seem like he came in screaming and kicking, "I'm going to get immunized whether you like it or not." That is not what happened. It's not at all. I think he was afraid to talk to me about it because he knew how adamantly against it I was. So he made that post, and I don't think that even when he referred to us as stupid parents, he was like, "That's stupid parents." He was probably like, "Look, my stupid parents don't believe in vaccines." It wasn't out of, maliciousness that he did it. It was, his wording wasn't the greatest, yes. But they, again, like you said, they took that and they're like, "Oh, a rebel." No, we talked about it. I told him I did not want him to do it. I thought it was a horrible mistake. We argued. There was some, very emotional anger there on my part because I was so afraid, because I do know what I feel vaccines do, and I didn't want to see him get hurt. And so a big part of it was he's my son. I didn't want to see him make a mistake and not be able to take it back. And so when it was all said and done, I said, "Look, I love you. I respect you. If you've done your research and you think this is the best thing, I'm not going to stop you from doing it. But I do ask that you read more books and educate yourself on vaccines, on what is in them. Each one of the vaccines, educate yourself on both sides." That's what I did. I didn't take for granted what everyone was telling me. And his answer was, "I did. And I think this is best." And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. I researched for months, years. I kept researching.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're going to tell me in a couple of weeks you've researched both sides and know everything about it, and this is your best decision?
Yeah.
I said, come talk to me about it. And that's one thing that I definitely regret, is that I didn't educate my kids before they were able to make their own decision about this. And I didn't say brainwash. You want to brainwash them. No, I didn't want to I want to.
No, I listen. I talk to my kids about this. They know what's in a vaccine. They know the reasons why. If they're going to vaccinate, and again, my son's 19. Of all the things he's going to rebel against his parents, this is not it. He's just way too knowledgeable about the subject matter. And again, I would love to talk to your son and respectfully discuss it. Of course, I've heard that some groups have interviewed him that are anti-vaccine that have woken up and have been kind of harsh and mean to him. And I don't think that serves a purpose. I'd like to be respectful in discussion, just as you've tried to do with your own son. And we hope that we, and that's not to mean that we're not going to be emotional and angry about it, because we're parents. We know this happens. But, and not every day we get to this reality so quickly because of the speculation about what has happened here. The reality, folks, is this is a real mom. This is a real son. This is not a made up thing. Now, the advantage that is being taken of this young man, I believe, by the media is something he's willingly participating in. Because, as you say, you're 18 and suddenly every media outlet in the world wants to put you on TV. That's pretty cool.
Well, absolutely. And I think that the information that he has found, he has concluded that because he's backed by so many people now, media everywhere, that it just solidifies that he is absolutely right. And that scares me even more, because I'm like, oh my goodness, he is going to saturate himself in this where there might not be turning back. And not just for him, for his kids, for his grandkids. It's going to travel down that line. And that, again, there's a lot of guilt on my end from not educating him early, so that when he did reach this age, he was making an informed decision, a fully informed decision. I did not do that.
Well, this is an important part of the discussion, Jill, and to your credit, you're willing to acknowledge these things, and any parent could be there. I mean, it's worse when we've heard, and from many parents, like in the film that's being produced now, Vaxxed 2, the parent stories that are going to be told, when you learn the hard way, when the kids are given these shots early on, they end up in the autism spectrum or dead. And then you go, man, I regret. You want to talk about regret? So this is not as significant, but it is significant because of how they're playing it.
Right. Who'd you say that masked man was?
It's a bird. It's a plane.
Robert Scott Bell.
Here I come to save the day.
Yeah, a question from Sally Elcordy, our friend who actually sent me this T-shirt, and she did the design on the Outlaw Vaccines shirt. She says, bet they won't want to interview him after he has taken the shots. Well, listen, I pray for your son, Jill. I don't want harm to come to him. I know some people might be going, well, I hope he gets sick now. That'll serve him right. It's like, no, that's not what we're ever about. We're letting the facts where they are. I mean, it is possible he could be injured. This is especially the flu shot. That's like the number one reports that the VAERS system and in the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Court program we've been reporting on quarterly here. But again, this is an interesting and intriguing scenario that you have a young man now. He's a man. He's having to make his way. And if people will take advantage of him and his, to some degree, naivete, I can say that. I can say that about my son. He's naive about some things. He's a young man. But, they will prey on people for their purposes. And that's what we're in the midst of watching, and my heart aches for you as a mom, as a dad here, looking at you as a mom, and your ex-husband as well, who seems to be on board with this. So we'll continue discussion. Super Don, any thoughts or comments or questions of Jill while we're on the bottom of the hour break?
What I think might be interesting to talk about is because, listen, you have been interviewed. How many different news outlets have reached out to you and interviewed you on this story?
I think like 4 or 5.
And you probably turned down more than that, though.
Yeah.
No, I didn't turn down any.
Oh, you've done everyone that's asked.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're like, no, we don't want to talk to the mom. No. But we right? It's like, where's the balance and I hate to use it, fair and balanced, but where is it, right?
I mean, he even told me yesterday, he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I've done 30 interviews. And I'm like,
30. Wow. 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right.
And okay, I think, Robert, I think it might be interesting when we come back to kind of talk about the media situation, because how much of these interviews, because when they interviewed you, did you relay to them the same information that you're relaying to us? Would be the first question. And out of that information, how much of that actually made it on the air?
Well, almost nothing. I mean,
right, exactly. And then what's your treatment been like? And I already know the answer to this question, but I think it's different to point out your treatment online, on social media, on Facebook, and things of that nature. right?
It's varied. I mean, I've had a lot of people say I need to be in prison and my kids need to be taken away from me, which I find very humorous. That I'm a terrible mom. I've also had people that have supported me and share their stories with stuff that's happened to them. So, I mean, it's been definitely,
all
on the
over
other
the
side.
map.
Mostly, it's mostly been against me and saying I'm just an uneducated, dumb parent, which is funny because what cracks me up is the people that are saying that, I guarantee you they've never lifted a finger to read anything about vaccinations. That's what cracks me up. These people that are throwing stones have never even researched it. And that drives me nuts. It's like, you know what? If you want to bash me knowing the facts. Don't just come at me throwing stones when you don't even know anything about vaccinations. You're the one that's a fool. I mean, study it, research it. What do you know about it? What is going into your child's body that you can just say, you're a terrible parent, you don't vaccinate? It's like, oh my gosh. It's just so frustrating. But yeah, most of it's been pretty nasty.
Yeah. Well, we know.
And one thing that I caught on, and all of the news reports that I watched earlier today about your story and about your son, is that I think it's ironic that they are praising him for doing his own research. This teenager doing his research on the internet. He did the research. Yet, when a parent says, I learned what I learned about vaccines by doing research on the internet, all of the lab coats rush onto Twitter to remind you that you can't do research on the internet. No, internet, Google is not research. Yet they're praising him for doing internet research, and it's so it points out, I think, the fact that they don't have a problem with doing research as long as you come to the conclusion that they approve of in that research, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
5 seconds. We're going live. This is our longest segment coming up on radio, so we're going to hit that momentarily.
Willing to go where the truth takes him. Here's Robert.
So on the break, it's Valentine's Day, by the way. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. My wife comes into my studio, hands me a note that says, "Shut up and let her speak." I'm like, honey, you get it. I'm not going to say much. I just got to set this up, and then I'll get out of the way. and Jill, you are doing an extraordinary job of communicating. I know you're not a media expert per se, but I appreciate, again, taking the time to communicate a very sensitive. I mean, this is about your family, for goodness sake. Now the world, is seeing it. It can't be the most fun thing to do, and having your 18-year-old Ethan, come out in opposite of you and your husband or ex-husband at this point. So we talked earlier too off the air about the interview that I saw on Ohio station. And, it was just like 30 seconds or less of you going, "Oh, well, I appreciate my son done his research. It's all right." And out of 20 minutes of interview, that's all they show. I mean, it's an inherent bias. And I wanted you to reveal more about that, because Del Bigtree on his show today, Highwire, was banned or asked not to come to the event that I'm going to be at or plan to be at in Canada, the Total Health Conference, because he's a known anti-vaxxer, and they're going to withdraw all of their advertising. So he gets on an interview with like a Toronto Globe and Mail. And of course, what appears as one little snippet of a comment he made in response to a question. And then he has the entire answer, which is like, a paragraph or two long, and they cherry pick what makes them look the worst or the best for the audience that they want. And that's what they've done with you.
Right. Absolutely, they have. And, again, it's their agenda. They want to get across what they want to get across. And I think the only reason they really included me was because it's a family affair. It's something that is tension between a mother and a son. And it's showing, again, like you said, that rebellion of him stepping out saying, "I'm going to make my own choices." And they love that because they want other kids to follow in his footsteps and do the same thing. And that's scary. That's really scary.
So one of the things Super Don mentioned is, I'm going to get in trouble for my wife because I'm interrupting. I got to ask this question. It relates to the research question. And Super Don made a great point about, they pray, and you even acknowledged, at least in the snippet of the interview that I saw, you're glad your son's researching. And of course, the media is praising that this teenage boy researched vaccines and came to this conclusion. Yet the same statement about parents like you or me or research, it's like, oh no, that research didn't count because you've come to the wrong conclusion. Dr. Google didn't serve us right then. So hypocrisy is in evidence here.
Right, and that's something that my son and I have argued over. You know, he's said over and over again to me that, you know, personal testimonies are not valid resources. I want numbers. I want scientific data. I want to see it on the FDA, the CDC. That's scientific data. My argument is, since when did we as humans only become valuable through statistical numbers? I mean, when did that become the way we judge how we look at things? And just on a side note, there's a ton of data done by medical research, a ton of it out there. And people say, well, why isn't it on the CDC website? Why isn't it on the FDA website? Well, because it goes against what they promote. And you would invite a vegetarian to speak at a beef seminar. It wouldn't make sense. So why would they put the information that's against vaccines on their site?'re not going to. You have to seek that out. You have to search for that. And he's just so headstrong that the only information that's good and right is the FDA, the CDC. Like you're blindsided. You're seeing right in front of you, and that's it.
That's appeal to authority. And I think as a teenager, of course, if your parents have been the authority, you're looking to rebel. The irony is that you replace that authority with some other authority. So you're still undermined by an authoritarian, overlord in this case. Now, we could go through, of course, the fallacy within the government, the conflicts of interest, or the lack of legitimate peer-reviewed studies on safety and efficacy. There's no placebo-controlled studies, and that would matter to somebody that really cares about science. But again, I got to ask about your son from a mom's perspective. You know, was there something in him that you saw prior to this that he was looking for something to do that would, be an act of rebellion, or do you think he just stumbled on the vaccine issue?
That's what's funny. I don't, not at all. I think that because I know that he has mentioned in the past couple of years, he's brought it up, and I've kind of sloughed it off. And I'm like, Ethan, you do not want to vaccinate. Trust me. But Mom, what about? I'm telling you, you don't want to do it. So looking back, I can see so many times that he brought it up to me and really wanted to talk to me about it. And I'm a mom of 7 kids. It gets crazy. I'm holding one kid, nursing another, changing diapers, cooking, working. So I never took the time to see how serious he was about this question. And I look back and I see where he many times tried to come to me and talk to me about it. And I just never recognized that as something he was really concerned about. So I don't think, absolutely do not believe at all that it was out of rebellion that he did this or anything like that. I think that he was 18 and thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And he didn't even tell me about it. And again, I don't think it was, I'm going to go behind my mom's back. I think he was like, look, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to say anything to her because I know she'll be upset. And it wasn't until I got a phone call from the doctor's office, one of those recorded phone calls saying, your son has an appointment tomorrow at 3:15. And I'm like, what? And I was like, Ethan, they're saying you have an appointment for the doctor's office. And he's like, oh yeah, I was like, well, you're what? He's like, and he did not want to tell me. And it wasn't, again, out of rebellion at all. I think he feared hurting my feelings or hurting me. And he's like, I'm just going to talk to them about, immunizations and see if I decide to get them what I want to get. And of course, I'm like, what? And that just spurred a whole big, argument and what are you doing? And I know, again, do I think he did it out of just being this rebellious teenager? Absolutely not. In fact, I love that he respected me enough and loved me enough to try and hide that from me to protect me because he knew how upset I was going to be about it.
Well, what strikes me, and I'm going to get in trouble with my wife, but I have to, see this because as a parent, I'm looking at what you're describing. And this is one of those great teachable moments we always like to say for our kids. This is a teachable moment, son or daughter. Right. For parents, you had a lot of signals through his teen years where he was bringing this up. Intellectually, he was engaging, wanting to engage in you. And, 7 kids, good Lord, it's hard to, spend time with one, much less all of them. And so this is not a criticism from me. This is what I think you're trying to teach us all as well. It's like moms, dads, pay attention. When your kids have intellectual curiosity about something, find the time to sit with them and research with them. And in fact, hit the opposite of what you believe and go in deep. You know, what I loved about what my son's middle school education, he had a teacher that would have them actually in like a debate, argue the opposite of what they believed, have to take on the opposite of their viewpoint so that they would really immerse themselves in that. And I say, moms and dads out there, if your kids are interested and intrigued and they're asking, do not ignore that. Do not love it, slough it off like, oh, it's just what I believe. Don't you dare do it. That's going to set the stage for what we're seeing manifest today.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that's frustrating is they are making him out to be this rebellious teen, and he's not. I mean, he's one of the greatest kids I've ever met, and I'm proud to call him my son. He's an amazing boy. He's smart. He's witty. He's funny. Oh boy, is he funny. The stuff that he can come up with will make me laugh all day long. He's such a cool kid. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to see that too, making him out to be someone he's not.
Well, and if you don't meet these kids in their intellectual curiosity where they are, right, and fulfill and satisfy to the best of your ability, they're going to go out and find out and satisfy it in their own way differently than what you had wanted. Now, this is not a guarantee that even if you had done that, he wouldn't also come to the same place, because these kids are independent spirits of their own, and they have minds of their own, and they will make these decisions. So in saying anything that I'm saying, Jill, I'm not criticizing you as a parent. I'm acknowledging and grateful for your willingness to communicate this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I know that, we've gotten into so many discussions about these vaccinations and, the whole thing of herd immunity. And I keep telling, him it's not herd immunity, it's herd mentality. That's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Most people just want to go with the herd and they don't want to question it. And, and now that we're arguing and talking about it and trying to get this out, he's already so mindset and where he is that it's hard for me to even get anywhere with him.
Right. No, now it's gone beyond that.
At that point. Yeah. Right. And that's one thing I'm arguing, like, okay, well, and he keeps going back to the whole FDA and CDC. And I'm like, when did the government become full of truth and they have no hidden agenda? Because when that happened, I must have completely missed the memo, because that is not what I've seen. We've always questioned the government and their motives, and which is good. We need to hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we doing that now with vaccinations? Why are we just assuming that these vaccinations are good and it's what needs to be done? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. And, I don't know, people, like I said, have always said, you're not a doctor. And I'm not. I've had family tell me that. Jill, you think you're so smart. You're not a doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. But I do have the ability to think for myself. And when 2 and 2 don't add up to 4, mm-hmm, I want to know why, especially when it involves my kids.
Sure.
That's what I want to know. Where am I not seeing these lines? Something is not right.
Jill,
right.
Let me ask you, are there any other misconceptions that you want to clear up on this show that the mainstream media is not portraying accurately about either you, your son, or the relationship?
No, I think we hit on most of it. Mm-hmm. I think we hit on most of it. And like I said, do I think he's doing this for a publicity thing? Absolutely not. He was blindsided by this just as much as we were. Mm-hmm. This whole family has just been, what just happened? Yeah. So, it's, I don't know, people are going to be people. You can't stop, the ridiculousness of some people.
My message to your son, Ethan, if you get to listen to the archives, I know you're at work. If you want to come on board and talk about it, we'll be respectful. Obviously, we're coming at it from a viewpoint that's more in line with your mother, but obviously we will bring up some issues that are, intellectually engaging. They might be tough if you've made up your mind. Then, of course, your mind is closed, and that's a terrible thing. But, the Plotkin deposition that we've been covering over the past weeks to months here, the revelations about the lack of science, admissions from FDA that there are no peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies on safety or efficacy.
There's not.
Conflicts of interest in science. I mean, these things, if you have intellectual integrity and you're not into the religion of science, you begin to say, okay, let me look with honesty and integrity about these things, make a decision. Now, if it's an emotional issue at this point, and if you're enjoying the publicity and you wouldn't want, again, there are a lot of factors here. And this is really, despite the global perspective on this issue, these are humans, mom, Jill, son, Ethan. These are individuals that are going through their own unique experiences on planet Earth. The question is, are they willing to be used by people to achieve an agenda that might not be their agenda? We'll talk about it as we wrap up these teachable moments with Jill Wheeler here on the Robert Scott Bell Show after this.
The Robert Scott Bell Show. In all my years of radio, I've never seen anything like this.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
All right, Super D.
Hey.
All right, Jill, well done. Very good. Thank you for communicating all of that. And, people are complimenting you. Very well spoken. And I think the message is getting clearer by the moment.
Awesome. That's what, I mean, if I have to do this, then I guess I better do it the right way and let them know exactly how I feel. I can't stand public speaking, but if I have to and I have to be a voice, I will do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, it's...
Officer Hayes, our bodyguard there in the chat room, I'm not a doctor. Good for you. You're not the third leading cause of death in the United States.
That's good.
That's excellent.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, if we would say, if it was all just an intellectual discussion, I think much of the controversy would be over. But we recognize that vaccination is more cult or religious in devotion, and that when we get into or attempt to get into discussions with people who have a belief that seems to be set in stone, then you end up in a shouting match and nothing is accomplished. So my purpose in even inviting your son on isn't to get into a shouting match,
right?
But it would be to engage in a polite and it could be an intense discussion about these issues. But again, I'm not itching to fight anybody, least of all your son, on any of these things, but any more than I would be to fight my own son on this. But again, these are some issues that, again, families go through, and this one just happened to be made public around the world.
Right. Right, absolutely. And I definitely, I don't know how much time we have left to talk, but there are a few things I would love to hit on.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a few more minutes here in the break, and then we've got a 5-minute segment on radio to wrap up with to bring us to the top of the hour. So,
oh my, that's all we have left is 5 minutes.
Yeah, after when we come back, it's going to be quick. I mean,
okay,
this is this is broadcast radio. If we were just an internet show, we wouldn't have the limitations.
You got to do the commercials to keep the lights on, pay the bills, but.
As
one thing that I wanted to say that it was a takeaway from watching all of the interviews this morning, I got to give props to CBS, which is something that we don't normally do very much. But in their interview, they actually gave you kudos.
I know. I can believe it.
Did you see that? Where it was at the end of the interview, they were like, "Wow. Here's a mom that, is having just a nice discussion with their son, and they're getting along, and and to me, that was kind of a teachable moment where it's like the takeaway from this should be that guess what? Two people can disagree on this issue, have a discussion, but at the end of the discussion, still care about each other and love each other, which is not what you're seeing online, which is not what you're seeing in social media. The amount of hate that is out there between people that, especially coming from the people that disagree with you or anybody with your point of view, is horrendous. I mean, it's just pure evil in a lot of cases. And people should be able to have this discussion and not be like that. It just blows me away, the comments that you see online from people that think that anybody who even questions vaccine doesn't even say I'm anti. I just question. I'm concerned. I think there might be something wrong. People will come out of the woodwork and attack people. The vitriol is just just insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, the worst of this, and there's a lot of worse of this. The mainstream media just trying to foment dissent among children and their parents. I mean, that to me is, you want to talk about highly irresponsible. But it's par for the course. They're not concerned about families. They're concerned about an agenda, and that agenda is pharmaceutical. Some would argue population reduction, et cetera, a reduction in fertility, ability to have or procreate. Last hour, Jonathan Emord mentioned Oliver Wendell Holmes and, the undesirables, sterilization. Again, how long would it be before they come after us? Because they've dehumanized those of us who believe that vaccines are not manna from heaven. In fact, quite the opposite.
Right.
And with so many efforts in this story in particular, you see how they took a story and they made it go viral because they own every media outlet and everybody parrots in a similar way. So we're going to wrap up with some teachable moments and takeaways in the last segment coming up in 5 seconds. Super Don, I'm going to throw it to you first if you don't mind.
Okay.
Stand by.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
I want to thank Jonathan Emord for cranking it up with the Sacred Fire of Liberty today. And this hour, our special guest, Jill Wheeler, the mom of Ethan Lindenberger. We're talking about the discord in a family and bringing it out from the personal to how does it impact us all. And Super D, again, takeaways, teachable moments. And I know Jill has more to say, but I want you to set this last stage up for us.
Yeah, real quick, a couple of things. If an 18-year-old went on Reddit and said, "Hey guys, I want to get a tattoo. My mom doesn't want me to get a tattoo. Where can I get a tattoo?" This would have never made the news. But because this was, how can I get a vaccine? The media just ran with this, and this is a textbook example of how the media can manipulate people in situations to advance an agenda. And I believe that's exactly what happened here. So this is a teachable moment for anybody who can, that can observe what happened here and see how the media works in situations like this. Secondly, one of the interviews, and we were talking about this on the break, came from CBS News. And one of the things they pointed out was how here you have a mother and a son. Mother disagrees with son. Son disagrees with mother. Both in their interviews were both saying, listen, I don't like it that, my mom is being attacked. I want you to understand that, she cares about me. This is in a place of caring. It's not a place of her trying to hurt me, stuff like that. So at the end of the interview, CBS said, look, this is a great thing. Look at this. They can talk to each other. They can discuss this. And she supports him, and it's like, I wish people would look at that and go, you know what, we can be that way too. But unfortunately, that's not what happens in this debate. And I think that we can see Jill and her son as an example of how two people can discuss this issue. And even if they disagree at the end of the day, they still care about each other, still love each other, and they can still get along.
Yeah, I'd like to think that we don't have to beat each other up. And of course, much of the media says that, so I'll acknowledge that. Jill, a couple of minutes left. Any particular things you want to leave for our audience around the world to consider?
I think one of the things, we have unlimited access to unlimited information. Find non-government funded researches. Use it. Read as much as you can. I mean, your children are worth just a little bit of time to educate yourself. Educate yourself on the vaccines. Educate yourself on the disease. And, I know we've been told vaccines, they offer this lifetime immunity. They don't. I mean, if you look at the schedule, even us as adults should be getting more vaccinations and more vaccinations. And how many adults can say once they've reached the age of 20, 30, 40, that they keep going back to the doctor saying, oh, I need my booster. I need more vaccines. They don't because they're not sick. They're not sick. Why would they go to the doctor to get a shot when they're not sick? But yet we take these newborns and we shoot them up with all these drugs before their little bodies even have a chance to fight against anything. It's like, where is the logic in that? Where is the logic in that? And there's not. We're thinking. We're not thinking. That's the problem. We're not thinking. We're allowing someone else to make these decisions for our children, and we're suffering for it. We're seeing these repercussions all over, and we want to deny and say that it's not related. It is related. Read, research, research. Don't take for granted that whatever your doctor says is absolutely the end all, because it's not. I can tell you many stories, which I know we don't have time, but where I have gone to doctors for certain illnesses. I had one of my kids break out in 36 warts on their feet, couldn't even walk. Doctors freezing, doctors using the acid to burn them off. 9 months of horrible, just regimented, doing all this treatment wouldn't work. So they finally said, we're going to have to put him under, do surgery, and he's not going to walk for 2 months because his feet are so bad. 3 days before that surgery, I pulled out and I said, there's got to be another answer. I can't keep looking at this road in front of me and not looking to the side. There has to be another answer. And I did. I researched, I read, and I researched some more and found a drink a drink that boosted his immune system, and in 2 months, 36 warts were gone. 2 months, 36 warts were gone. I didn't treat just the symptom. I treated him from the inside out. I researched, I read, I studied.
Jill,
I didn't just take what they said for,
I know exactly why the mainstream media is cutting you down to 20, 30-second sound bites, because you are far too rational. You're passionate as a mom, very intelligent, and the message that you're sending is one of great empowerment to both parents and children. And, again, if the one big takeaway here, no Jerry Springer moments on the Robert Scott Bell Show, is talk to your kids. If you find they are intellectually engaging and curious about a subject, especially vaccines, do not shy from that discussion. Go into the research with them and talk about the conflicts of interest, the government that you're not supposed to trust blindly. Not here, not now, not ever on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Thank you, Jill Wheeler. We'll have you back on if you'd like to come back on. In the meantime,
I'd love to.
Remember, the power to heal is yours.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.